Okay, we're back, and you can see we've got a little bit of reinforcement done up here, strengthen things just a little bit. I'm not super worried about this area here because we are going to have logs or stones or something going up this sort of gully here, so I'm not really worried about the bottom of it too much. We'll take care of that in a bit. But what we are going to do now is add some obstacles and some other things to this little sort of ramp pathway up the side here. And then we'll cover that with the cheesecloth, so we'll be able to put the truck down and either come in through the tunnel here or up the ramp, up the outside, and up the mountain. Also, what we've got done here is we're sort of starting to sculpt the riverbed a little bit. I want to get just a basic sort of channel for the epoxy to flow in once I get, you know, sand, rocks, stones, other things in there. So we'll get that finished up, and we'll get the ramp done, get that all laid and covered in plaster. Once that's dry, we'll start covering everything with some cement. I've got some cool tricks and tips that I've learned just recently. I want to share those with you guys. We'll get those done. But for now, let's finish up the ramp and the riverbed. Okay, so we're finally done with plaster. All this covered up. I would not recommend doing this. For something this scale, cheesecloth and plaster was probably not the way to go. I should have probably done cement and some sort of maybe drop cloths or something like that. For this size, it just was such a hassle. It was such a hassle. But we are essentially done. We've got the big mountain here. These parts are super difficult, which is exactly what I wanted. I wanted it to be really hard to get up to the peak here. I've still got to figure out what I want to do with this trough, this sort of gully. Not sure exactly what I'm going to put in there yet. But we have the little run up the outside all completed. And then I added what is going to be kind of a scale garage in here. I've got to build some sort of a deck, or I'm gonna make it maybe out of expanded steel or wood, I'm not really sure. Or maybe I'll just do plywood with some cement on it, I'm not really sure. But it's gonna wrap around here into what will be kind of a scale garage where we can park the rigs. Planning on adding an SCX24, FCX18, maybe an FCX24. I'm not really sure. We're gonna have a few rigs, so I'll have somewhere to park them in here, drive them out, and then either through the hole in the wall or up the mountain. The mud pit all set up, just gotta fill that with the BBs. Still have to design and build a bridge to go here. I think we're just gonna do a couple of logs across this little area here. Something difficult where you have to sort of balance on the logs to get across. Tunnel area is going to be cemented as well, so I'm not really worried about plastering that because it's inside. You can't really see it to begin with. And then I still have to figure out the fountain situation. The pump I got originally isn't working. It's not strong enough. So I got to clean that out, get a new pump, make sure that that's going to work out properly. But for now, I want to start with the cement. So we're going to cover this whole thing in a top coat of cement to give it some strength and also some traction. So now this plaster is very slick. It feels rough and it causes your tires to get hung up in a couple of places here and there, but it has a kind of powdery, slick consistency. So you end up having a really hard time getting some traction on any of this. You can see I've been doing a little testing with the TRX4M. And you can see where it's just spinning tires trying to get up this little area. It sucks. So we're gonna give this whole thing a coating of cement, and we're gonna do that with our bag of basilite here. We're just gonna mix that up into a slurry and paint it on, and it should work well. I've heard mixed things on the internet about doing cement over plaster, but I think it's gonna end up fine. We'll see. Either way, let's get to work. Okay, so real quick, here's our progress so far. This is just a very quick skim coat of a cement mixture. So this is a technique that I learned from the boys over at Reactive Terrain. If you haven't seen them yet, check it out. They have a very, very cool indoor course. But this is a really simple technique. Basically, you're just gonna make a very, very watery, soupy cement mixture and just grab a paintbrush and paint it right on. Now I have done plaster already, and plaster just sucks the moisture right out of this stuff. So I'm finding so far, I mean, I've only done a small section, but it seems like the best way to do it is to just come in and kind of lay a coat and get it kind of coated, let it tack up for a second, and then come back and do a little bit more over it, and that leaves that really nice smooth texture. We're gonna get rid of all of the cheesecloth, so you won't see any of those little holes or squares or anything. It's all gonna be covered up like that. We're gonna have nice, good texture, very, very good traction, super good durability, and then we'll be able to do our detailing and stuff over the top of that. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw you guys up on the time lapse, and hopefully we'll get this banged out pretty quick. Okay, it's the next day. This is our top coat done for now. It's the first coat. First coat of the top coat is done for now. And it looks fantastic, I gotta say already. It's completely changed the look of this course. Now it is kind of patchy looking because some areas are drier than others. But so far, I mean, it's absolutely awesome. Taking shape perfectly. All of the texture from the cheesecloth is gone. All of the little holes are gone. We've still got a couple little places that I've got to hit that were missed, but I'm gonna go over and do one more coat in the high traffic areas that are gonna see a lot of wear. They're gonna see a lot of weight, places that will get worn down a lot. I did try to add a little bit of texture with some of the postcrete here. It worked in some places. I need to get the concrete, get the cement rather wetter first before I add the postcrete, I think, and then that'll give it that nice texture. I do still need to get my airsoft BBs for the mud pit and fix the fountain for the waterfall. So for now, let's get one more skim coat on this thing. We're gonna let it dry fully, and then we can start painting, detailing, adding our environment, our details, landscaping, that kind of stuff. I'm so excited to get my TRX 4M on this thing, get it crawling around. And I think we have another truck coming soon too. So can't wait, let's get back to work. What's up everyone, back inside with the mini crawler course. And as you can see, we've skipped a ton of steps. I got a little ahead of myself and didn't show you guys a lot of this process, but I'll go ahead and explain that for you now. You can see we got the TRX 4M chilling, the FCX 24M chilling as well. So you get kind of an idea of the scale and perspective of this whole setup. What I've done is prior to paint, I came in with a mixture of postcrete and cement and filled in some of the spots that I thought needed more texture, some of the spots that were a little bit weak, that had been chipped out previously. And I just glopped some of that mixture on. You can see I tried to go for a little bit of a mud texture here up into the mud pit. So I kind of smeared it up this way and then just added a little bit more texture, a little more traction, a little bit more thickness, and a little more strength. So overall, definitely a great idea. Postcrete with sand in it, and about a 1 to 3 mixture. So 1 part postcrete, 3 part cement, and that gave me a pretty good mix to kind of glob onto some various areas. And it definitely has a ton of traction. Put a lot of grip up in this area over here. And then what I did was I just went in with a number of different cans. So some of this stuff I had already, some of it I had to go out to the store and get, but just a bunch of different colors of primer, paint. We got satin khaki, matte Spanish moss. These cans are super cool with an adjustable nozzle on them. So you get a bunch of different spray patterns. That's pretty sweet. Just brown, you know. And what I did was just kind of misted over most of this structure with kind of a mix of different colors. We've got greens, browns, blacks, tans, grays, all sort of just mixed in various ways to create sort of a nice base layer. I've got a ton of stuff to add some detail to this landscape with. So we went to the local hobby shop and picked up a few things. And to start, I've picked up these Tamiya acrylic little paint. And what I'm gonna do with these is just go in and just sort of brush some texture on in various places, add some unique look, a little bit of depth and a little bit of weathering effect. And it's gonna make, I think, like this area overall look much nicer. You can see I've added the airsoft mud pit. We've got that filled up, and I've been doing some testing with that. A lot of it spills out this end when you drive out and spills down into our creek area down here. Kind of a pain, but I also knew that was gonna happen, and I tried to design this wall a little bit higher so that the BBs would spill out into the structure down here so that I can clean them out and they're not all over my floor, so that's cool. Went ahead and added the log bridge here. I'm not sure how much I like this. I might change it up, we'll see. You can see the sticks that I used had some moisture in them, so when they dried out fully, they flexed and cracked out of what little bit of cement was kind of over the top of them. I've also been doing some test driving with both my trucks on this course. And you can see there are some places where it's been chipping and wearing. In particular, here in the mud pit where it was just a little bit too thin over the plaster and it chipped away and left a big ugly white spot. In the cave over here, we chipped away a little bit of our waterfall, and back there in the corner, same with this little spot right here. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna come in with more cement and cement over those areas before I paint again, or if I'm just gonna paint and leave it as is. I do know that I wanna add a bunch of rocks, real rocks all over the course. We're gonna add a lot of real rocks and stuff in here, and those I may want to cement in, so I might cover the chips as well while I'm doing that. Still have yet to decide what we're gonna do with the scale garage area. I've got to set up some lighting, a backdrop, walls, benches, a lift, all that kind of stuff. I want to do a pretty cool scale garage in here, but that's going to be sort of a longer term project. I want to build a little shelf back behind here so that I can store a power strip for charging batteries, have the various little USB chargers plugged in back there. And I do also want a way to run power maybe to some lighting around here eventually. So we'll figure that out. Mountaintop, obviously misted with a little bit of white just to give it that kind of snowy, cold look. And the first project that I want to tackle is this waterfall. So we had a little bit of an issue. The original setup, the basin there, the way that that's aligned, I decided that's not gonna work. I don't like that, so I'm gonna change it out. Also, the pump that I had picked up this little fountain pump off of Amazon thinking that it would be enough to run the water the like 2.5 feet that it is, you know, from the basin up to the waterfall. This advertised a max of about a 2-foot head height, so I thought it would work. Ended up not working at all. The water got about halfway up and then stopped. So we'll use that in the in Grandma's fountain over there. But to replace it, I went ahead and picked up this unit, which ended up being way bigger than I thought it was gonna be. So this thing is massive. It's definitely gonna work, and it's adjustable so I can turn the flow down so it's not gonna be spraying all over my house. It is definitely gonna work. It's way bigger than I thought. It's way bigger than I wanted, but we are gonna make this work. And in order to make that work, we're gonna take the tub that the BBs came in. By the way, those are the BBs I picked up. If you wanna find those on Amazon, they are the camouflage color. It looks really cool. Kind of a mix of different browns. It looks like mud, so that's pretty cool. This one tub was enough to fill up this whole little pit, but just barely. So if you're gonna do one of these pits, you might need to get a couple of these. We're gonna replace the basin. Oh, let me get under here. Hi, Roomba. So here's the setup I have currently going. Hot glued in place. You can see all the nastiness in there from construction. But here's the setup I've got going in there currently. It's temporary. I wanted to test it out and see how this system worked. So you can see the small pump ran up through that hose there up to the fountain. But that reservoir is too small for the new pump, and it's also just not gonna work in general. So we're gonna go ahead and cut that out, and then we'll replace it with this tub that the BBs came in. We'll get that glued in place. We'll figure out a way to mount the pump in there, and then we can use some of this 2-part epoxy resin. There's a kit that I picked up on Amazon as well. Shabibi epoxy resin. And we'll mix some of that up to fill in our river. We'll go ahead and add sand and stones and some grass and that kind of stuff. We'll go ahead and add all that in, fill the river with our epoxy, and then at the same time we'll use the epoxy to seal up the basin there so that we don't have any more leaks. So once we've got the base kind of laid down, we've got most of our colors in place and that sort of thing, then we can go ahead and start adding some texture. I've got a ton of stuff to add some scale details and texture to this whole environment. I think it's gonna look really, really cool. We do have a lot of work to do though, so let's go ahead and get that epoxy mixed up. We'll get the old basin cut out of there, get our new fountain pump in, and we can test, make sure the waterfall works before we move on to anything further. Okay, change of plans. So in the process of cutting out the hole for the new reservoir there, I managed to break this thing pretty good. So this is just like a cheap plastic food storage tray thing that you can get at, you know, like the dollar store. So it didn't last. It broke pretty badly. So we're gonna alter our plans a little bit. With the new pump is much larger. This whole setup is much larger. So I decided, ran down to the store and picked up a new, bigger sort of pond. And now this will go in place of the original pond. I'm gonna have to cut a bigger hole from underneath. In fact, okay, back under here so you can see how much bigger this new pond setup is gonna be. Covers a significantly larger area. So we're gonna cut out a little bit more of this, enlarge the pond. We have the space for it. That'll give us room to mount the pump and everything. We'll then run our line back up to the waterfall. I got some things to make that a little bit easier as well. I am going to have to redo some of this creek bed area, but that's fine. Not a big deal. Why don't we start by getting this old thing cut out, make some room for the new one, and then see how it looks from there. Yeah, now as you can see, we have kind of destroyed our riverbed here, but that's okay. We'll patch it up. That'll give me a good opportunity to patch up some of this other stuff that got chipped up. I'll have to do some painting and touch up anyway, so whatever, not a big deal. All right, let's see if our new pond will fit in here. Yeah, I'm gonna have to trim this back lip a little bit. No big deal, otherwise fits really well. Okay, so we just grabbed the Dremel, lopped off that side of the lip on this little container, and now it fits perfectly. So our pond is set. That's a perfect fit. Once I get this glued in here, it's gonna give us a nice little bit of lip so that when we pour our epoxy in for the faux river, it'll give it a nice place to stop. The water line will come up and it should look awesome. So now what we're gonna do is pull this back out. And since we have the ability to get this done out of the model, we are gonna mock up the reservoir. So I wanna do it this way so that we don't see the pump. I wanna keep that all hidden. So we're gonna drill some holes so that the water will fill this entire chamber when it's done. And then we're gonna go ahead and glue everything together and then run the hose and the power cord for the pump out of here. Once everything's dry, I'll go ahead and silicone this. Once we make sure that everything works, I'll silicone this in so that it's all sealed up, and then we can fill it completely with water. That way we'll have water all the way to the top and you won't see any of the pump or anything like that. It's gonna look really cool. So let's go ahead and get this cut and mounted so that we can get the thing in here. Okay, so now that this is all glued together, I think you can get kind of a better idea of what the overall plan is. So we've got a ring of epoxy all the way around the lid here, nice and built up, fully watertight. Once this dries, the next step is gonna be to thread this on. The hose and the power cord will run through this slot. This will get tightened down. The pump will be in here, and then we can fill this reservoir almost all the way to the top to run tests to get our flow rate right. We can adjust the flow on this little pump with this little dial on the front. So we can adjust the flow and make sure that we don't have a fountain, we have a waterfall. Once we get a nice ideal flow rate down into the pond there, then we'll go ahead and seal this gap here as well as all the way around with some clear silicone. That'll watertight this entire thing. And then we'll go ahead and fill it all the way up. This area here will have a bunch of holes drilled in it once the epoxy has dried the lid to the bottom of this container. Then we'll drill a bunch of holes in here. Then once this is assembled in the course, we can fill this with rocks, paint it, do some texture, that kind of thing. And it won't look at all like there's a pump in there. It'll just look like the bottom of a creek or a river or a waterfall. So hopefully should look pretty cool. Just gotta wait for about half an hour for that to set, and then we can get everything in place, get the fixture, the pond hot glued in place. That doesn't need to be waterproof, it just needs to adhere into this section here. So we'll go ahead and get that glued in. This is all messed up. It's not a big deal actually, because it's gonna get covered up by the texture of the riverbed. So the sand and rocks and things that are gonna go in there. That can get touched up with a little bit of cement work, and then we'll go ahead and get it all sealed up, run some tests and make sure it works right. As you can see, I've gone ahead and added some more cement and postcrete mixture into some of the areas that have been cracking and chipping away due to high wear. I've been doing a lot of testing on this course, doing a lot of driving on it, trying to see what's gonna break, what needs repairs, what needs things to be added to it. And certain areas here and there have chipped off, so I've gone ahead and repaired that. I'm gonna have to go ahead and do some tweaking on the exit to the waterfall just to make sure the water lands in the basin properly. We'll go ahead and get that filled up with some rocks and test it out, but that is gonna be the next video. We're gonna add some trees, some landscape, some grass, some detail, and eventually, hopefully some lighting too. So that's gonna be really cool. Very excited to see how this turns out. So stick around and I will catch you guys on the next one.